I was mentally so tough. When you trained at Westside, if you went to a meet was 60% of the intensity of a training day.
Easily.
And I started lifting with you guys on an irregular basis in 99.
Yeah.
So I was at the black painted windows Demarest, probably about 2.5, 3 years before they moved it to Wilson.
Okay.
And I did notice the vibe change was different, and that's, I think, what you're getting into. I noticed in your generation, you, Kenny, and George, and Louie, you guys all looked at, and Chuck, all looked at each other as somewhat equals psychologically, meaning that when you brought an idea, guys would listen, and they'd either do it or not do it, but they would try it. The difference was when I got to Westside is Louie already had this plan set in place that he felt that everything he knew worked. But what I think he was starting to not understand is that everybody was a little different. I needed more volume and I needed more raw work to be really good. I lost hypertrophy very quick if I trained in gear too often. The same thing happened to Greg. And so when we started to put in new different types of ideas, so what I would do is a wave, this is what really would get Louie pissed, is I would do a completely raw squat week because, as you know, at that time, Louie was in his 50s and he could not squat raw. He was too beat up. So it made him feel bad that he couldn't lift with us because we were lifting in shorts and a belt, and then he'd have to put a bunch of shit on. We didn't care, but to him, it hurt his ego a little. And what I found was I would do one day completely raw, one day with a little bit of gear, and then one day with maxed out gear. And then I would go back and rotate it. And that created a deload in and of itself neurologically because obviously you can't lift as much raw as you can in gear. So it's waving those weights around to where I'm constantly going as hard as I can in that given environment for that week. And so Louie's like, well, fine, fuck it, try it and see if it works. So we do a 15-week wave of it. Greg goes and breaks the all-time world record, and I go from number 5 in the world to number 2. And now I'm like, oh shit. Well, the only thing I needed to fix then was my bench was stuck at 700, which was a great bench for a 3-lift because the shirts weren't crazy yet. And I was already benching probably 585 raw when I was doing 700. So I was a strong raw capacity bencher even then. And I go up and do a seminar with Bill Crawford. And Bill Crawford shows me this crazy technique of flaring the elbow, tucking. And JL was the one that initially taught me that. And you remember Louie being super pissed about him going and learning from Crawford, but I had to take his name off the board. So I go learn it, and my bench goes from 700 to 800 in 9 months. So now I'm the strongest equipped bencher at Westside as a 3-lift guy. Well, you would think that would get praise, but it didn't. It got a lot of backlash because it wasn't the style that Louie felt would work. And in your generation, I feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel that if you brought something new to the table and it worked, it stayed.
Kinda. It was. This brings up some other questions because what the interesting thing is, I don't think we've ever talked about, the differences that transpire between those is through the whole Dimmers time, we really never used gear. And I think that was a big negative, right? Because we would just use briefs, to be able to squat in, just your France double briefs or whatever it was. I mean, you're sitting on the box with the bar. It's not like they're helping. It's just support.
Yeah.
I can remember never putting my squat suit on or wraps on until a meet.
Yeah.
Never putting the bench shirt on ever until a meet. Later on, towards the back end of those years, we would put it on maybe once or twice, in an 8-week period of time, just to see if you could get shit to touch. It never would. But it'd be like, fuck it, it will touch in the meet. And looking back, I think I would have squatted a hell of a lot more because I'm looking at what my max effort work was compared to guys that came later. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. Wait a fucking minute. They're squatting like 100, 150 pounds more.
You gotta remember, at Westside, it did not learn how to structure that gear training until they got the pressure from Big Iron Barbell. Because Big Iron and Hussey was putting gear on every week, which I don't think is right either. There's a happy medium. So I was doing gear every 3 weeks. And that's when I noticed for me and Greg and a lot of the other guys I trained that were world record soldiers at that time, that worked really well for us. And I think a lot of it was because we just had 3 different goals, 3 different weeks, so we weren't burning out. Whereas Louie had more of that mindset of hammer, 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 that same intensity every time and without rotation of environment, meaning gear. And that would burn you out faster than anything. I mean, that's what people don't realize. If you want to see how fast the NFL transitions players, come and see back in the heyday how fast lifters didn't stay at Westside. And why? Because they burn the fuck out.
There was also with the ideas and stuff like that. It's funny, right? Because it was really more conversation of, the people that you were talking about. So let's say we come up with something, then it becomes, well, how can we make it seem like this is Louie's idea?
Yeah. And see, we weren't good at that.
So
we wanted the credit. So
we were more along the lines of somehow or another, we need to make it look like this is his idea so that it can be implemented.
And see, I should have sat down and actually had that talk with you because I think that would have saved a lot of our issues. I come in and Louie is always looking at me as like, hey, this is Matt Wenning. He's got a master's degree in biomechanics. Let's have him help him write articles. You remember I was writing articles for Westside Barbell, and I was answering all the emails at the time. Well, with doing that, I felt that I had his trust to try new things that were outside of his realm. And what I realized real fast is that was not true.
No. And it was. I mean, there's. I always say he's kind of like the. You remember the movie Animal House?
Oh yeah.
Like fucker. He's like, no. That was like that was like him. So you had to learn how to kind of manage that, but then also understand that he's really not your friend.
Yep.
That he's your coach, but not really a coach, training partner type of thing.
Yeah.
And kind of keep those things separate. So there was that. For me, the thing with, we also had it was a tighter crew, but it was a smaller gym. So you got a smaller gym now. So when you got a gym that's say 400, 600 square foot, people have to be there to help run the mile, have to do all this other stuff.
The energy's there.
The energy's there, and it's built into the training because you're squatting and, crews and it's go. You know how that, so, 2 people are squatting and then don't do anything else. Everybody else should take care of, running the rack, changing the box height, all that should be done by somebody else, not the people squatting. And that's kind of how it was. Then when we went to West Belt, it's like, well, where the fuck's everybody at? Because the reverse hyper now is way on the other side of the gym. The glute ham raise is on the other side. So, we go through our squats. Louie was my, sidekick back and forth squat guy, whatever you want to call that. And we get through that and it'd be like, okay, well, the next group is up. It's like, well, where the fuck is, they all, they're doing their accessories. They moved, it lost that part. And some of it's probably good, some of it's bad. Some of it's good because they could focus on doing the things that they needed to do. But the other thing which you touched on, when we were talking earlier, is a lot of times you say you need to do this, right? So then you start doing it, then literally the next day, or sometimes the same day, what the fuck are you doing that for? It's like, well, you just told me. And anybody that's ever trained at Westside will share exactly the same story, right? Because it's funnier than hell. And it's like, well, then what the fuck? It's like, what the hell are we supposed to do? Then you just realize, okay, Chuck squats X, and at that time it was close. It's like Chuck squats about this, so I should be able to handle about this, but his work capacity's here. I got to dial my work capacity down a little bit. Then you would or Rob's squatting this is right where I'm at. You just match that, but Rob doesn't. He likes to do a couple things and leave. So you would gauge what you're doing off, everybody else.
Sure.
But like yourself, I was during a lot of probably the back half of my period there, because the online and answering the questions and all that, I'm front-facing guy kind of for Westside, so helping Louie with the seminars, consulting, same thing like what you were doing. And then I leave, and then I believe you were next to be that front-facing voice.
So I'm trying to remember his name now. Who was the guy that ended up moving to South Carolina about the same time? Stafford.
Yes,
Stafford. I took Stafford was doing all the emails.
Yes.
And he was like, hey, man, be careful because it's an open website email and there's a lot of stupid shit on there that I just get all this spam mail. And I was like, cool. So a lot of this times we get these Westside and there'd be 60 emails and 40 of them were trash and you had to sift through them a bunch. And Louie paid me to do the emails, which I didn't care. I thought it was a great honor. But the big thing is I took over for Stafford because Stafford was kind of the more cognitive person when you left. He was kind of the guy that was carrying the torch as far as I felt the education side. He was very smart. And so when I come in, Louie's like, well, this kid's got a master's and he's super strong already. I can put him at that position. And so that was a great honor for me right out of graduate school. And then one of the big things I think that started to become a big rift for us is Buddy Morris was coming down, and he was at the Browns at the time. He was coming down, and somehow Buddy and I got to talking, and he didn't know me from anybody. He just knew I was a big kid, and he's talking to Louie, and Louie's like, yeah, Matt's got a master's, and he squats 1,000 pounds, and he's super strong. And I see Buddy Morris' eyes light up because he needs a new assistant. because what's his name's getting ready to leave. I'm trying to remember what's his name.
Tom.
Yeah. Tom's getting ready to leave, and so I said, "Hey, Louis, do you think it'd be a good idea? I can get a job with the Browns. This would be awesome." And he acts happy for me in my face, but behind the scenes, he's like, "I'm going to lose Matt." And so he stops putting work into me. He stops showing me attention, and the volatile side starts to show. And I didn't even know what I did. I'm just thinking, this is a Westside Barbell guy getting ready to get a job at a pro team. This could be a huge, but what he's seeing is I'm giving up my lifting.
Well, yeah.
You see, because that's all he cares about is that damn board.
While you're there, the way that because I've had to have, I remember having a conversation with AJ Roberts and some other people that moved in, and it's just kind of like, okay, Liz, here's what you're going into. You know, I never had this conversation with you, I don't believe.
No.
And I lay it all out. Like, here's what you're going into. You know, you are like he's Bill Parcells and you're playing for the Patriots. You know, I don't want to say he owns you, but that's what it is. You know, so that's all he cares about. You know, he'll do anything for you while you're there.
Yep.
You know, and, you know, afterwards, not so much. But it does any coach.
No.
You know what I'm saying? So you got to, when it's in perspective, it makes more sense.
Yeah. The hard part with me, I think, is when I grew up, Timmy and Dawson and the guys I was telling you that were world-class, national class lifters at the Y, they would bend over backwards even if I wasn't training with them. Yeah. And so that's the kind of loyalty that I was used to, and that's what initially what Louis had portrayed to me.
Don't get me wrong, I learned this the hard way.
Yeah, so we both did. Right? So but yeah, so that's kind of how that started. And then, so by 2005, I finished my master's. I move over full time, and Louis is ecstatic because now I'm there full time. And I squat my first 1,000 pounds in 2006, which was the craziest squat I'd ever done for one major reason. I don't remember if you were there at that meet. It was in Vegas, and they did it in alphabetical order. So I was in the 308 weight class, but my last name was W, and somebody else squatted the 1,003 before me, but he dumps it over his head. Spotters lose 2 fingers between the monolift and the plates, and the guy pretty much scalps his head because those bars are brand new squat bars. They load it back on the rack, clean up the blood and the fingers, and Louis looks at me and goes, "If you can get this squat, you're a fucking maniac." Because I already had my knees wrapped. I was ready to jump up because it was the same weight, and it was almost the same rack height. It was like 16 and a half. I remember it completely. And he goes, "Man," he goes, after that guy just lost his fingers, the guy's like, "Oh, his fingers are off," and they bombed the dude out of the meet, and they put the weight back up on there, and I got to crawl underneath this thing and just watch about 3 people die handling this 1,000 pounds, and I get it. And that's when I realized, like, I had a different gear. Like, that shit didn't bother me. I was mentally so tough. And the thing of it was, when you trained at Westside, if you went to a meet was 60% of the intensity of a training day.
Easily.
Because you didn't get that kind of rest periods, and you would rather compete against somebody you didn't know than to disappoint Chuck. Well,
that and for me and for my time period, it was the bullshitting abuse or whatever you want to call it, the shit talking, right? Where it just keeps going, and you're like, nah, it's just, you're ignoring, but every night it's like, motherfucker, you get caught up, so a meet's like a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Where there was, after moving to West Belt, it was when actually Wendler was maybe a year before that, where it was, I remember when Jim and JL